Welcome to my first workshop, which is called the Inflammatory Response. So we're going to explore the first line of defense and the battlefield that takes place underneath the skin. So first off, we probably all have either cut our skin, stepped on a nail, or punctured it in any way. Whenever that happens, we will get redness, swelling, heat, pain, and loss of function, depending on how severe the puncture wound is. But all these 5 responses belong to the inflammatory response. Inflammatory response. And this is a non-specific response. That means it doesn't matter how severely our skin gets damaged or how it gets damaged, the response is always the same. So it's non-specific. It's a non-specific response. And that goes right back to the first line of defense. Because our first line of defense is our skin. Anything that wants to invade our body first has to get through our skin. Our skin acts as a barrier, and that's what we call the first line of defense. So our first line of defense is our skin. The battlefield that we're going to be talking about, it takes place right below our skin. So therefore, let me move this down a little bit. We will be drawing humongous skin cells, and for that I'm going to choose blue. These skin cells are closely connected to each other. They're intact. They do not have a gap. So here, those are our skin cells. And on the other side, right here, this would be the outside. And over here we have the inside. So right below our skin, we have 2 types of cells that we're going to talk about. We have the mast cells. I'm going to draw one over here. Mast cell. And I'm going to draw another one over here. And the second type of cell we'll be dealing with is our dendritic cell. Dendritic cell. So they are right below our skin, waiting for pathogens to invade so they can defend us. Our dendritic cells, we're going to keep track of our cells over here on this side. So our dendritic cells they engage in phagocytosis. Phagocytosis means that they will just eat debris, pathogens, dead cells, anything that we do not want below our skin. So those are the dendritic cells. Our mast cells, they release histamine. Histamine is a chemical that causes blood vessels to dilate. So histamine causes vasodilation. Alright, but those 2 cells need to be activated. So first off, let's go back to our skin. Let's say we stepped on a nail, and the nail poked through our skin, damages our epithelial cells. Here we go, we have our nail. And our nail has been dirty. It's covered in cow manure, and once it entered through our skin, it took a lot of bacteria with it, and all these bacteria are now inside our skin, moving around. So the yellow is going to represent bacteria. the presence of bacteria is going to activate the dendritic cells to start moving around to get rid of the bacteria. So the dendritic cells are going to eat the bacteria. But these cells right here, our skin cells, have been damaged. And they also will release chemicals. These chemicals that they will release are called chemokines. So these chemokines are also in this area. And they get in contact with the mast cells. And they will activate the mast cells. So let's move back over here. So our chemokines they're released by the damaged skin cells. They will activate the mast cells. So chemokines activate the mast cells. Now, oops, it's a little crooked. Once the mast cells are activated, they're going to release histamine. Let's go back to our drawing. So here we go. The chemokines activate the mast cells, and the mast cells, they release histamines. These histamines travel down through this layer of tissue until they reach our capillaries. Now, instead of just drawing a tube down here to represent a capillary, we will draw individual endothelial cells. So let's see. At first, these cells are tightly connected, but once the histamine rains down on them, they separate. And there will be pores in between them. So anywhere where the histamine touches, we will not have tightly connected endothelial cells. We also have another layer down here. So at first they're tightly connected because they have not been influenced by the histamine. But then down here in this area, the histamine caused vasodilation, which means that the individual endothelial cells moved apart. Alright, perfect. So right here, this area displays vasodilation. Inside our capillaries, we have red blood cells. Some over here, but in this area where vasodilation occurred, we have a lot of them. But we're not that worried about our red blood cells right now. They're okay, they can stay there. What we really want are white cells. So we have one down here. No, we just don't want any white cells, we want neutrophils. So here we have our first white cell. And then white cells, they also collect in this area down here. The area where vasodilation took place. And they will actually roll along the capillary wall, and they will find these gaps, and they will actually squeeze through the gaps. They want to get to the area where histamine is the strongest. So up here, they're going to migrate towards the mast cells. So we have another one right here. Here's another one. It's just squeezing through. And they migrate up to the area where the mast cells are, because they want to get to the area where there's the most histamine. And once these white blood cells, the neutrophils, are in this area, they start also phagocytosis. So they help out the dendritic cells to eat the damaged cells, the pathogens, the bacteria, debris. So over here on our list, we now have white blood cells, and more specifically we had neutrophils. We had neutrophils that migrated into our area that was invaded by bacteria, dirt, and debris. Now, we still have all these gaps in between here. So not only our white blood cells that we want in this area escape the capillaries, also some red blood cells, blood plasma, blood fluid, anything that is big enough or small enough to fit through these openings right here. Now, if everything migrates into that area, we get swelling because there's a lot more fluid now in that area than we had before. Also, blood is warm. When blood leaves the blood vessels, we get heat in this area. With the heat and the swelling, we have nerve cells in this area that feel a lot of pressure. So they think that's going to be, or they interpret it as pain. And this pain is going to be sent to our brain. So up here, this goes right back to the inflammatory response. Because of vasodilation and all these different cells leaving our capillaries, we will get redness, swelling, heat, pain, and loss of function, which is our inflammatory response. So I'm going to go back to this down here, zoom out a little bit so you can see it again. There we go. So this is the complete picture of the inflammatory response in the battlefield that takes place below our skin once our skin gets damaged.